Turn it over now to one who has been another young person, been in the church since I've been here, and I'm thrilled that Tori Scheeff has agreed to share with us her vision of what the church could be. So let's give it up for Tori Scheeff.
First of all, before I start talking, I did not watch this video. It was shared with me, but it wouldn't load on my iPhone, so I didn't watch it. And that might shock you once I start talking. Also, I'd like you to know that this has been sort of a heavy week for me thinking about all of this because while Pastor Allen approached me quite some time ago, I was working a double, and like most people my age, I'm just kind of really busy, so it was put off until this week, which made it pretty heavy. So if I get a little emotional, forgive me, okay? So the question was posed to me, what is the future of the church? Where do you see it going? Our church, the church body as a whole? And what I came up with as sort of a starting answer is a community of individuals in a faith-based setting, a God-based setting. And you might be sitting here going, well, isn't that what it is? But I took that farther, and I thought, well, how can our church improve this community? And what I got was to bring the perpetually absent age group back in. I'm looking around and it's speaking pretty loudly. There aren't very many people aged maybe 18 to 30, about that crowd, sitting in these pews. And there has to be a reason why they're not here. Why can't we pull them in? Why is my generation, and I'm sure this isn't like just this time, I'm sure it's been like generation after generation of people just leaving the church and then eventually coming back. But what happens when they don't come back? I started doing a little bit of research, and a poll that I found said that nearly 28% of people aged 18 to 30 attend church on a weekly basis. And I thought that was kind of high. I don't think that if I got a group of 100 people my age together, 28 of them would say, I go on a regular basis. So I guess it's not as bad as I think it is. But if you compare that to an older group of people, age 65 and over, nearly 60% of them say that they attend on a regular basis. And I think you all could vouch for that. Not that you're all 65 or over, but you hear me. So we need to find a reason for young people to stay in the body of Christ and to help build the kingdom of God. And I think that part of it has to be the translation from being in high school and being a teenager to becoming a young adult. And there needs to be more room in our church for that transition. It's like one day I'm graduating high school and then bam, now I'm an adult. I have to figure out, I'm going into college, I'm going to find a job, I'm going to figure out living independently. And I don't think that finding a place in the church should be another obstacle. I don't think it should be so hard to transition. I'm not saying it's just our church. And I'm certainly not placing blame or looking for a reason to not come. I'm just saying that this is how it is. Our religion is so community-based, and you can find countless times throughout our good book that we need each other to rely on. And I think especially during this time in my life, I need a community and a support group that is faith-based and has good advice to offer me. I think that more young people need that. I think that our society can use that a lot. And eventually, if people aren't coming in, they're not coming back. So I have, I guess, some suggestions. Maybe young adult Bible studies or even something like a potluck. So we don't know exactly what we can do, but I think that there's hope. And I think that once more young people start realizing that this is a problem, they can be active in pulling people in. I believe the future of the church and involves not seeing this age group leave. The future of the church is nursing Christians from their first encounter through their whole life. And I think that's incredibly important. And I'm going to work on involving myself in that. We don't all have to be the prodigal son, and we don't all have to stray to come back. That's what I've got.
Okay. Well, thank you, first of all. Can you say again your definition of church?
Okay, so church as in a church body, not necessarily a place, but a group of people.
Okay. That are faithful.
Right.
You said something, I guess.
Yeah,
well, the first thing that came to my mind was you didn't say place.
Right.
And I think we've been hearing this a lot from other folks, and that is, we get so comfortable in this building that we think that the church is the building, and the building is the church. And I just love the fact that your definition had nothing to do with buildings. And that's part of the discussion we had at the new visioning team yesterday, and as we had a financial subgroup on Wednesday. This dynamic between how much time, money, attention do we put into building, how much time, money, attention do we put into program, and how much of that is beyond our walls. So that was kind of the first thing that came to my mind. So you would agree that church could happen anywhere?
Yes.
Okay. Then the second thing, and I'm also influenced by the fact that I'm leaving today for advanced conference. And you kind of took a count, of who's here, and you were talking about some percentages. I will now go to a camp where there are 100 people between 19 and 29 years old, and they are all about creating church in that space.
Yeah.
And one of the things that it's uncomfortable for me, but I've heard again and again and again, is people say, camp is more church to me than church ever has been.
That was something that I was going to bring up. I think that a lot of people, specifically in our denomination, find our camp, which is a wonderful thing and a great place, to be their church, to be their solid ground, and where they find comfort and where they find Jesus the most. And I think that that's great, but we can't all travel to camp all the time. And while we can be with our camp friends and build that community more, it's difficult. So camp can't be the only place for young people to find it.
Yeah. So I asked the opposite question as a leader, and that is, what is it about camp that we ought to be doing here? Can you think of anything, that a characteristic at camp that makes it work, that we could?
So I don't know if there's a specific characteristic. I think it's mostly just that it is a community of young people and people of the same age group and mindset, sort of, that really makes it work.
Kind of a critical mass.
Yeah.
So it's not the fact that we sing Little Tommy Tinker, Salad Quaker. That was going to be so easy. If we just sang Little Tommy Tinker, we would grow! Okay, not that.
No.
Well, I did think of the fact, I agree with you, it's kind of a critical match. You've got a certain number of people the same age. But I'm also amazed with this group. It's the one camp all summer long that adults, we lead things, we do the kind of theological and discussion sort of things, but the entire camp is run by people of that age. They elect 3 officers the year before, and I'm co-director of this camp, and I sit back and eat bonbons, and I really do. Because these 3 officers, and every year 3 people rise to the top, and they plan this amazing camp, and they just ask me to do things. And I think, does our church take young adult leadership real? How many times have we had a youth on the board and then not really empowered that youth or gave that youth resources? Or they felt so alone because they were the only youth or the only young adult? What if our board was just you and Wolf and all the youth over there? What if you were our board and you told the rest of us what to do? Wouldn't that be awesome?
Well, our finances might be a little bit scarier. But that's but it would be.
Okay, fair enough.
The prodigal son story, you picked that.
Yeah.
And when we first texted, you said your kind of a sub-theme was the lost generation.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. And maybe more than 100 years ago, your generation were really strong. But I think all studies show from World War II on, the young adult age bracket is just, is lost every
time.
Every time. But I'm also, and so I think the prodigal son story has some really nice parallels. But I also want us to caution. I had to keep cautioning myself. Just because someone has gone away from home, and I was getting at this with my children a minute, doesn't necessarily mean they're off doing bad things.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about, we know the bad things that young adults might do and not go to church. But what are you all doing out there?
So
When you're not here at 10:30, what are you doing?
I'll give you my average Sunday.
Yeah.
Things that could keep me from coming to church. And like the one guy said in the video, it's a time commitment, but we have to find a reason for it to be a time commitment we work in. There's never going to be enough money, so all of us working 2 jobs and all of us going to school and all of us finding time to hang out with our friends or even just catching up and hanging out by ourselves because we need a moment to ourselves. There's lots of things that would keep young people from coming to church, not just being out there being like horrible people. I know personally for me, I work a lot, I go to school, I'm a full-time student, and it just becomes difficult, and the more that gets put on my plate, the easier it is to push things off that are good for myself.
Yeah. Well, I think all of us can relate to that, exercise program, diet program, things like that. Well, so thinking again about that prodigal son story, I think we have to be really careful not to be judgmental of people who aren't here, But I really like the fact that the father is non-judgmental from start to finish.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be that way with young adults, and that in the sense of, it might just be the nature of our society. So why don't we just send you all off doing good things and try and find support and connect and love you, and if that day comes back when you choose to come home, then we'll be there, again, completely non-judgmentally, and you're a part of the family. I just love that about the father.
Yeah.
So, obviously I'd love for us to come up, and you kind of gave us some thinking about creative ways to keep young adults here. But what if we were also okay with young adults not being here, and loved you all, and found out how could we help you get jobs that are good paying? How could we find ways to support you and your friends? What if we did a bowling party and none of us went, but we just paid for you all to go, at the corner alley? In other words, that non-judgmental way to support you all in that world out there.
That would be great.
Okay. So then the final thing that came to my mind while you were talking, and literally this time I didn't get to prepare like I normally do because of all the other stuff. As I'm sitting there, I thought to myself, you reminded me of one of the things my Christian education professor at Bright Divinity School loved to talk about. He kept challenging us. What if the church paid very little attention to baptism? We did baptism and we made it nice. But what if we made ceremonies that actually meant something to people, the young adults and youth? What if we came up with your first driver's license ceremony? Betsy Zenda, how many of y'all remember Betsy Zenda? She contacted me because she had bought a series of beautiful keychains for her children. She bought them all at once, even though they're different ages, had me bless them so that when their kids became of age, she would have car keys, a keychain, to give them that had been blessed by Pastor Al. That's actually acknowledging a point of life. Now, sitting here, I came up with another one. It's like, I don't want to just reuse my Christian ed professors. What if, okay, this is a little challenging, what if we came up with a ceremony, it doesn't have to be public or anything like that, about a kid's first use of contraception? No, seriously. We don't talk about sex so much that I think kids, what I fear is when we don't talk youth and young adults and said, where are those moments in your life that you need the church to be there for you? And how could we be there for you? Whether it's ritually or just passive.
Yeah. I think that is so important because then that's drawing and building on the community. And then you're coming to your faith-based program. You're coming to your faith home and your faith family for these important life steps like driving and those things you were talking about.
Your personal apartment.
So then you're coming to the community and you're seeking better advice. You're seeking advice from people who've been there and done that and who have done it maybe more spiritually than other people that you might go seeking advice from. So I think that's a good idea.
Because I really heard you say, you make time for things in this busy schedule, the time that has meaning for you.
Right.
And so that's our challenge. Church, did you hear the challenge? Time that is meaningful. So, amen.
And I think we need to feast those who are not the prodigal sons, the ones that have stayed with us.
What was your word? We need to
Feast.
feast. Oh, that's right. Barbecue beef. That's the answer to the thing. Little dialogue here. I didn't know we were going to do this. Janelle.
I love to see a group of our youth and anyone they want to invite to camp or whatever to actually from the beginning to end run a whole service.
Oh. Give the whole thing over, not just the sermon?
The whole thing.
Okay, I'm sweating. No, seriously, we can do that. We can do that. Okay, well, good enough. Any other final thoughts?
Exactly.
Okay, let's thank Tori Scheeff.